Hi everyone. So on today's video, I'm in BCG office in Dubai, Middle East. A lot of people aspire to work here, tax-free country, and a lot of good things. So from that perspective, I'm here, and I'll be joined by Bhavya Kumar, who is managing director and partner at Middle East office. So I'll have a chat with him regarding two broad topics. One is that how does he manage his money personally, and second is around career, productivity, and macroeconomics. So these are two broad topics that we are going to speak about. Hopefully, you will get a lot of insights. So let's head over and start our chat. Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. So super excited to have Bhavya with me. And Bhavya is a managing director partner at Boston Consulting Group in Dubai. He heads I'll let him do the introduction. I'll just quickly introduce the topic and hand over the virtual mic to him. He will be able to add a lot of details about how he personally invests his money, what is his relationship with money have been, what are the opportunities this region holds for Indians, because many of you wish to shift to Dubai. Zero taxation, is that a reality or not? That's what we are going to speak about. And we are also going to speak about the futures of careers. Usually these type of opportunities are given out at top tier business schools where you get to speak with partners and managing directors of top consulting firms. But my goal is to democratize education for everyone and let this quality information get to everyone. So with that spirit in mind, we'll kickstart our conversation, and over to Bhavya to just quickly help us understand more about himself, and then we will jump into the specifics.
Sure. Thanks, Akshat, first of all. And my name is Bhavya. I'm a managing director and partner with BCG based in Dubai. I lead our technology and digital business for the banking sector in the region. Been in the region for the last 10 years with BCG mostly, and then with another consulting firm. So I have a lot of experience in this domain and also in the region in general. Very happy to share my insights on the journey that I've been on and what I can, more importantly, give back to all you guys, in terms of my experience and some do's and don'ts of this region.
So before understanding the reasons why people shift to Dubai, the one key reason that I can see as an outsider is 0% taxation. So is that a reality? What are some of the other reasons why people could consider shifting here? And how easy is it for Indians to shift to Dubai in form of the career opportunities? Not necessarily in consulting, but just general spectrum.
Yeah, sure. So I think you're absolutely spot on, right? Zero income tax is true. So far, UAE has maintained that. And I think it's going to stay for some time for sure. That is one of the biggest advantages coming to this region. But not only that, I think the region has in general over the last 10 years diversified a lot. Earlier it used to be mostly UAE as a whole, an oil-based economy. But now, as you know, Dubai pretty much has very less oil. They have diversified a lot into other sectors, be it real estate and tourism, construction. And also if you look at a lot of emerging tech, fintech startups, the sector is just growing, yeah. So this brings a lot of opportunities for not only, consulting firms, but also, a lot of young people from India, for example, other markets who see this as a potential region for career growth, right? The second, I think, important aspect in this region is it's a little bit insular from global macro, headwinds that we are seeing across the world. And the reason is, of course, it's a commodity-driven economy. As long as the oil price stays, a little bit okay, this region is fine. Second, a lot of investment happens here from the top government sector, right? And because there is stable political leadership, which also means that whatever ambition that the leadership has is also implemented. Yeah, so there are no, let's say, elections happening every 4 or 5 years, which means a very stable environment, and that is very conducive for economy and more jobs in general, right? For Indians, I think it's they have a very close connection to UAE in general. There are more than 3 million Indians that live in UAE, and they work across a variety of sectors, right? A lot of them are very successful businessmen. Some of the large businessmen in UAE are Indian origin. If you look at professional services as well, there are a lot of people who are leading, large multinational companies here and have built tremendous careers, right? So now for people who are interested to explore the opportunities, two things come to my mind. One is there is a huge Indian network that you can see here, and you can easily tap into that, through LinkedIn, there are various other networks, where you can actually sign up and then get access to these jobs. Second, I would say there is a big platform called Indeed. I think it's very, very powerful for Middle East specifically in UAE. They have very, very nice opportunities all the time. So I would encourage all of them, whoever is interested, to actually look at those opportunities and see what can be done. Last but not the least, I think the last thing is, if you are from a college or a school, try to connect to any of your alumni, who potentially has a connection in this region, because I'm sure you can find that very easily, and that also helps you get into the right opportunities. So long story short, I think opportunities are there across all sectors, be it on the business side or on the professional services side, and I foresee a lot of growth in the coming 5 years.
Right. So just delving deeper, because I want to make this chat a little bit more practical, because हमेशा किसी भी economy के बारे में when we speak, growth opportunities are massive, growth opportunities are massive in India, growth opportunities are massive in the Middle East. Just setting the context right. So, for example, when I was at INSEAD, one of the key considerations of working in Europe or Singapore was that if you have prior experience of working in these locations, it really helps. So, is that like a constraint in Dubai as of now, or generally in the Middle East?
Not really, yeah, because we are encouraging people to bring all kinds of different, thoughts, talent, skill set to this part of the world, because a lot of this is built from scratch right now. There are so many things that are just building, and then we need people who are bringing skill sets from all type of markets. So prior experience in this region is not required. All we need is people who are specialists in some domain, right? So if you say you want to do, a crypto, for example, you need to bring that expertise and then come to this region. They'll welcome you, right? If you are an architect, this is a great place to be in, because there are a lot of new buildings that are being designed every day, so you should be here. So there are many other similar opportunities, but you don't need a prior experience in the region. The region is very welcoming to outsiders, especially Indians, given the strong, cultural linkage over the countries, over the decades, right? And now the political leadership in both the countries are also very aligned, so that helps as well. Yeah.
Now, in terms of the pockets of opportunities that high-skilled workers can pick, during my time, right, when I graduated from INSEAD 10 years back, or like 8 years back, it was consulting, which was like a big thing at business schools. A lot of Indians deliberately look to shift in consulting. So are there like pockets of growth that you're looking at where people can look at? A couple of years back, it was startups and VC, PE firms. So from that perspective, if you have to just bullet out 3-4 key career paths that Indian can look at, what would those be?
Yeah, so I would still say that given the amount of spend that is happening from the economy overall, I think consulting is still a very attractive sector here and it's projected to grow quite rapidly. So that's number one. Second, I would say finance, investment banking is also very rapidly picking up, because the amount of M&A deals that we are expecting here, the amount of activity, capital raising, it's all increasing quite rapidly. So I would say finance and accounting is also another sector that has become rapidly. By the way, UAE just announced in June that corporate taxation has just gone live. So that means a lot of demand for accountants and other people who really can bring that expertise to UAE, because that's pretty new here, right? So that would be number two. Number three, I would still say that the startup sector is pretty relevant right now here. A lot of investment is happening. This is the region which is seeing the most capital even in this scenario that is being deployed to three main areas. So one I would say is AI, and specifically on Gen AI. Second, there is a lot of focus on climate and tech. So those startups are getting a lot of traction. And third is biotech. There's a big ambition from the leadership to actually make this region a hub of biotech. So those are some of the key opportunities that I see from a priority perspective.
All right. So if I'm not mistaken, you built your career initially in India and then you came to the Middle East. So speaking from a practical experience, what are the primary differences, pros and cons that you see in terms of the work culture, the growth opportunities between these two geographies?
Yeah, so India, I worked very limited in the beginning for 2-3 years, and then I moved to US, and then US to Dubai. So I think all regions are very different. Maybe to summarize quickly, if I say in US, for example, it's a very developed market, and then it's more, you have to be specialist in one topic and go deep and do those type of projects, let's say, and that's what is highly rewarded. If you come to a more emerging market, be it India and be it Middle East, which are both emerging, I think you need to be a bit more journalist in your purview, because the projects that you will work are more strategic and holistic in nature, because you have to, for example, reimagine the future of a city. So for that one, you of course need to understand some deep skill set, but also have a broad mindset. So to me, that's very important. Second, able to, especially in Middle East, you need to be able to work with people of multiple different nationalities. Because this is, especially Dubai, is like a melting pot of so many cultures. So you need to really understand, how do you work effective in teams where people are coming from different, geographies, backgrounds, etc. So that is very important. Versus in India, of course, it's a much more homogeneous type of workforce. So it becomes a little bit easier to work, but also then that means less diversity in terms of ideas, which I think is very good in Middle East. So those are some of the things that I see differences between the geographies. Yeah.
So work-life balance is a topic that I speak quite extensively about on LinkedIn as well. So in terms of work-life balance, because you have had exposure to 3 different geographies, what's your perspective on the same? What the work-life balance is like here versus the other geographies that you've worked in?
Yeah, I think I would be a little bit, provocative here. That work-life balance is a misused term, especially in consulting and in the corporate world in general. I think it's a very individual choice what you make of work-life balance. From my perspective, it's all about prioritizing what are the top 2 things you need in your life, and then aligning yourself, your professional and personal life around it. Yeah. So, and it comes back to what you need to get out of this. So, and also a lot of organizations now, especially post-COVID, are taking work-life balance very seriously. So, for example, in BCG, we have a dedicated program now that monitors, the health, and wellness of all the employees across the projects. But then, in the end of the day, I see, people. It's a case by case. If you really want to make sure that you have a sustainable lifestyle, it's in your hands, because ultimately you cannot go full Monty on one topic and then you have to compromise on another, right? So you need to strike a balance. In general, I think in Middle East, from what I've seen, the society overall is conducive towards a work-life balance compared to India. For example, in India, there is much more competition, among people, and they want to outcompete each other, and that sometimes means they take a hit on their personal life. But I see in the Western world, even in Middle East, that aspect is not so much there. So the competition is there, but not to the extent what I saw in India. Yeah.
So Bhavya said it very diplomatically. So basically, the work-life balance is better here. That's the sense that I
Overall.
get. Hopefully, that situation will change going forward in India. Primary reason is the competition, and because there is so much supply, and probably the work pressure is a little bit more from that angle. But opportunities are there. So I'm someone who is a big proponent of sort of building career in India. But by bringing Bhavya, we can understand the other side of the equation also, so that you get a perspective on both the sides. So that's the intent. In terms of career building tips, is there anything that you would share with youngsters on what 3-4 key things have personally helped you? What would you advise to them at this stage, sitting in 2023?
Absolutely. I think when I grew up, 15, 20 years ago, was starting to build my career, things were very different. But 2-3 things that have worked for me. One is, being patient, because I think a lot of when we are especially young, we are very, very, we want quick results very fast. I mean, things may happen, things may take time. So I think it's important to have, patience and try to give whatever you're doing some time to really see where you're getting, and where you're headed. Not being impatient, because a lot of people, change jobs very quickly. And I've seen over the years that people who stick to 1 or 2 employers pretty much, have a very good run in the long term, right? That's number one. Second is don't be complacent. Yeah, it's you may get into a job which is very easy, cushy. But then if you just be complacent, you will not grow and learn. And that's where you quickly become irrelevant. And more so now, because things have changed so fast, new technologies coming, etc. If you really don't, have an open mind and embrace things proactively, things will, go away very fast. Last but not the least, the importance of network. Yeah. No matter how you grew up, which schools you went to, there are always many people who have done great things. And you really need to be connected to your roots, to your alma mater, so that you can actually learn from people who have, who have been in your shoes, who have done this before you, and so that you can take their tips and, make sure your journey gets better, right? So those 3 things have really helped me across, in my career.
So in that respect, let me throw a curveball here, right? Let's imagine that you have no money, right? You have no network, right? You applied to a bunch of business schools and you failed, right? What would you do next? What are 3 things that you will go ahead and do next? Because this is a question that I'll get. Network banana, I understand it. I understand it. But okay, I don't have any of these things. What should I do?
Yeah, so look, going forward, I have a very strong viewpoint that the traditional careers would pretty much not exist, 10, 15 years down the line, right? So I think right now, even if you don't have a business degree, it doesn't matter. Yeah. You need to develop skills that are readily employable and in demand, and that you can develop outside, going to engineering or a business school. So, for example, you could do a 6-9 months, hardcore data science course, and that could give you an edge in the market. You could already start supporting. There are so many, jobs out there who need people like that, and they're not looking for any degrees, right? So, what I would do, I would actually, sign up for a data or an AI course, right? Pick one thing and then, build a skill set and then be in the market, yeah. Because you don't need any pedigree for that, right? That's number one. Second, I think it's very easy to get distracted these days. There are so many things happening. You need to focus on 1 or 2 things at the max and be good at it, right? because otherwise this market will not reward you for being, kind of a jack of all trades. That does not apply anymore. So I think you need to be a specialist. Third, then looking at Akshat, you and your videos, right? So I think financial literacy to a certain extent is very important. No matter what you do, who you are, you need to understand the basics of what finance is, what it is not, and how do you actually make money, and then more importantly, how do you grow and sustain it, right? So that is the third skill in my mind is super important in this world.
So on that note, majority of our audiences would be watching finance related content, and one, they would love to know your salary, which you don't need to disclose. I'll encourage them to go on websites and figure out how much do BCG partners, managing directors make. So yeah, 1 million plus, so right. So on that note, if you can help us understand how your relationship with money has changed since you were younger in your career, how you have made your money over time, and what type of investment decisions do you typically make? Then we'll delve deeper into these topics.
Yeah. I think it's a very good question. So look, in the beginning, of course, when you're starting your career, it's very different from now where I am. So I think one thing good that I did was earlier when I was starting my career, I did not have much finance knowledge. So whatever money I used to save, at least 40-50% of my salary, no matter where I worked and what I worked in. And it's the same is true even today. So earlier when I did not have much insights or knowledge myself, I used to pretty much give my money to an expert who actually does it professionally, and they would manage my portfolio basically, right? But over the years, as I learned more about the whole finance industry, the concept, then I've pretty much taken part of the portfolio and managed it myself on my own. And my mantra is very simple, that diversification is super important. Early on in my career, I was focused on finding one or two big things, like the multi-baggers of the world or whatever. And then you quickly realize that model is very short-term, short-lived, and is not sustainable. So now pretty much what I do is I have a very balanced portfolio, not only across asset classes, be it stocks, real estate, commodities, etc., but also across geographies, so that it's highly diversified, and then no matter what happens in one part of the world, it's relatively insulated. And right now for me, the position I'm in, it's more about creating steady streams of income rather than looking for this 5x 10x type of growth. So my portfolio is obviously catered towards creating that 6, 7, 8% return. And once I do that, I think I'm happy for that.
Okay, so on that note, one thing that is always, it's a question, right? I'm trying to brainstorm it with you that in an MBA program, they don't teach you how to invest in stocks and invest your own money. Is that something that you have witnessed because you're leading a team of so many people right now, really like top tier people? BCG is one of the top firms to work with. So on that note, right, I mean, why is it that people are so scared to manage their own money? And this is something that how they can learn on their own. I keep on giving them a lot of advice, but something coming from your side would make even a stronger point.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting you raise this. There are a lot of my colleagues, in this company, other companies as well, very advanced in their careers, still don't know what to do with their money. Yeah, and it's pretty much sitting in a current account and yielding nothing. So which is shocking to me, but that's still the case. And if you go back to business school, I completely agree with you. There are a lot of advanced courses there on finance, economics here and there, but they really don't teach you how to manage your wealth. Yeah. So once you graduate, and I went to Chicago Booth, it's a great school. But again, when I graduated, I had really, not much idea of how to really manage the personal financial management aspect is ignored. Yeah. So for my advice is, it's not that, you don't need to attend some professional courses to be able to do that, right? A lot of it is common sense, and a lot of it is discipline. I think that's another thing I didn't touch maybe. Earlier, I was at least so much discipline in terms of managing my financial decisions, and I would pretty much over-index on something when I'm really bullish, rather than my diversification will take a bit of hit. But then it's more about how disciplined you are with your strategy and what you want to be, no matter what the market is. Yeah, because that discipline really gives you the edge in the market over the long run. Yeah, and don't have a short-term horizon. I think that's the other thing. But for people, I think listening to this, one thing is make sure you listen to people like yourself, who are trying to teach basics, because it's not very complex. Yeah, this is simple. You need to apply your brain a little bit, and then understand some macroeconomic principles, how countries are running, what are the key indicators, and you can learn this in 2-3 weeks. Yeah, this is not complex. And based on that, use your own judgment to actually invest. Yeah, and don't be scared, because a lot of this, financial markets are here for a reason. They are here so that you can actually grow your wealth and enjoy the prosperity that the world is enjoying. So if you are out of this, ultimately you will end up losing, right? Because keeping money in the bank account is not an option, because that you're only losing your money.
So on that note, there is a very interesting point that I read somewhere. So basically, if you want to become rich, then there is a PE equation, right? Price to earning. And in order to become rich, you have to earn your E, which is earning, right? But if you have to be wealthy, then you have to increase your multiples, right? So that is what any person does. And therefore, you would have seen that जितने भी लोग wealth बनाते हैं, they or become extremely rich, they own companies. One way of owning companies is to go and invest in stock markets. This is not a push that you invest from our side, but this is just a point that I wanted to highlight, which almost every single rich person is doing.
Absolutely.
So on that note, what are your top three good investments and top three worst investments that you have made?
So over my career, if I look at, so I think I went very excited in the 07, 08 time on the real estate space. Okay. So pretty much, going with the flow of the market. That was probably the biggest blunder I did. The good thing was I didn't have much money back then, so whatever I lost, I could absorb it, right? I think maybe on the good side, there are 2-3 things that so for example, I'm very bullish on India, and especially now we have a stable political leadership for the last at least 10 years, and you see, all the macro headwinds kind of, giving an edge to India, given the fallout of China a little bit, that is also helping. So there are many things. So I've been bullish on India for the last decade or so, and I think that has paid handsomely across sectors, right? So and I have a large passive portfolio, which is just index, which is doing great. I have a real estate portfolio as well, which is also doing fantastic. So I think taking a good bet on India has been pretty good. Last but not the least, I also have done a lot of startup investing, which is almost 5-7 years ago, and that has also handsomely played out because market was very conducive, money was cheap, valuations were also cheap 7-8 years ago, and then I could exit at least partially on the right time, so that helped me make good returns as well. So yeah, so those will be some of the good and the bad ones. Yeah.
So on that note, what would be your advice to an analyst who is starting at BCG in terms of spending their salary or just general personal finance bits and pieces that you would want to stress on? Just 2-3 points.
Yes. So number one is, savings is super critical. Yeah. No matter who you are, what you do, I think if you can save, again, the number could be anything, but 40-50% should be your goal. You should at least save that and then immediately invest that in whatever asset class you're comfortable with, right? So, and if you don't know nothing, invest in index. Yeah, that's what I tell people. You don't need to be a stock market guru here, right? Just, whatever country you're bullish in, take the major index and put your money there, right? Second, I think all of, everyone, if an analyst or anyone, you should think about, ultimately you need to also take care of your health, also long-term, life insurance. You should make sure you have some kind of, exposure to insurance, not huge, but at least something, right? And the last but not the least, a lot of people, of course, want to own homes. So you also want to see what is your vision in that. Many people are now thinking about, do I really need a home? But if you really do, you need to also plan about it, So think about how you want to build it. What is the right way to do it? Do you really want to, take a mortgage, or how do you want to finance it? So think on those lines from the beginning itself, so that you can actually plan, and then if whatever you save, you can effectively invest it. Yeah.
So on that note, I let people learn from my videos a little bit about investing in India. उसके बारे में clarity है for majority of the Indians or a lot of Indians who watch my channels. But investing outside India,
yeah.
What has your roadmap been? What are some of the key things that you would advise people to get started on in case they are interested in investing outside India?
Yeah. So for me, it was always US. So outside India means US, and I have some exposure in Middle East, very limited, but most of it is US. And US, because I know the market. Yeah, I've been there. So first of all, if you don't know a market, it's very hard for you to make a position in it, right? So I know the US market. I've seen how it works. So that's why I've invested there. My tip is to look at, some of the market leaders there, right? Rather than chasing, some small fish in the market. If the market US is a huge market, as we all know. So I would say you would go with the big ones, the big guys, the Teslas of the world, etc., which you believe in, right? That's very important. Second, as I go back to the index point, right? So, for example, if you are bullish on technology, which I think you should be, it's a secular trend. So no matter, just taking exposure to Nasdaq, for example, yeah. And then there were so many opportunities in the last 2-3 years to actually invest there. So I'm sure people took opportunity, but if not, there's still time. It's never too late. Last but not the least, there are many speculative things that happen in the market on and off. I really am a person who's a bit risk averse, so I'm not advise people to take exposure in that. But there could be a school of thought that you also put at least maybe 2-3% of your portfolio in very emerging assets as well. Yeah.
So our audiences are very interested in learning macroeconomics. So one is that, do you see like a repeat of 2008, the 1930s depression, Asian financial crisis type of a situation? How big is that threat, and how well the world leaders and world economies are prepared to handle such a threat?
Yeah, so my view is I don't see a depression coming very soon. Yeah, I don't see it coming in the next 10 to 20 years. And the reason is twofold. I think we have learned a lot from the last crisis, and what I mean by that is banks and financial institutions in general are much more capitalized now. Yeah, they have a lot more capital. They have much strong risk policies now to avoid such a thing happening. Right. I'm more worried about the geopolitical risk that's surrounding the world right now. Yeah, you look at the leadership, in US, in China, Russia, anywhere else. Right, they are all turning more nationalist, and once you do that, the whole theory of globalization, takes a hit. Yeah, and that means there will be a deficit of trade going forward. There is a lack of trust among the markets, and also there are a lot of tensions that can even turn to wars. Yeah, which you've already seen. The Russia. My biggest fear is if this thing trickles down further, that is a major risk for the world, and that will obviously mean a lot of risk for the financial markets as well. Yeah. So if that scenario plays out, which it could very well, in the next 5 to 7 years, that would have an impact on the market. But if that does not play out, I don't see a situation where a depression is hitting us. It could be a slow growth environment for few years, which is okay, and the markets will recover. But overall, from my perspective, we are not heading to a depression. Yeah.
So help us understand, what do you mean by slow growth, right? Because that is very difficult for us normal people to imagine what slow growth actually means. So what would a world look like in a slow growth scenario?
So slow growth scenario is basically where your wages are not increasing. Yeah, that's number one. Second, overall GDP growth is also muted, which is saying 0, 1, 2% in that range overall. Yeah. So something like what happened in Japan for quite many years, right? That you actually had deflation there, right? Forget inflation. And of course, there are many reasons behind it. They had aging population, demographics, and all of that. But I think overall in the world, if you have very low GDP growth, 0, 1%, inflation is still there, which means it is 2, 3, 4%. So there's actually negative real GDP growth. That's environment I'm talking about, right? So in that environment, you don't have the free money, so that the credit is not that easy to take, right? And then there are not many opportunities to deploy the credit as well. So that would mean that the jobs would be tough to come by, right? And if you need to get those jobs, you need to get the right skills, and that's why, going back to my previous point, you need to be in taking those skills which are really futuristic, where you will have demand no matter what, where some of these secular trends are there, right? So that is my view. What is a low growth world could look like? It is 0, 1, 2%, on the GDP side growth, a little bit higher inflation, and then you see some of these external macro shocks as well. Yeah.
And to what extent does the debt factor into all of it? I was reading one of the data points regarding the US, that the debt repayment that the US government will have to make, it exceeds their healthcare budget now. So how is that scenario going to impact those?
So look, US is very peculiar, right? So they still sit on this reserve currency. So for them, it's very easy to print more and get their way out of it, right? So I'm not worried about US there at all. Yeah? And for the foreseeable future, we all talk about a different reserve currency happening. That's not going to happen in the next 10, 20 years. It's a good concept. BRICS is trying it, India is trying, everyone is trying it, but still 80% plus of the world trade is happening in dollar. Yeah, as long as that is the case, and for example, Middle East, the whole currency is pegged to dollar. Yeah. So that's why I'm not worried about the debt scenario now. I think it's just pushing the can down the road. And I think it's 10, 20, 30 years down the line, nobody can predict what happens. But for the foreseeable future, I don't see that problem playing out at all. Yeah, because they can print the money and get their way out.
Countries are reacting to it, right? For example, India is looking to launch digital rupee. They have built a trade settlement system. China is trying to build its central bank digital currency. So are these trends going to sort of lead to the downfall of the US dollar as Ray Dalio have been predicting?
So look, my view is no. I think these trends are real. They are happening. But again, even if they are successful, they will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of the overall trade market. For them to really destabilize dollar, it's going to be a huge event, and that's not happening in the next 20, 30 years. Yeah. So these are all emerging tech, right? Fine, they will take some market share, but still to dispute US dominance, I mean that's at least 30, 40, 50 if not more years away. Yeah.
In terms of, so one final question from the growth point of view is that growth actually comes from productivity. That's how I see it. Right? The biggest growth has come due to internet revolution that has happened, invention of fiat money.
Yeah.
These are big triggers that have happened. So do you see like AI to be such a big trigger as of now?
Yes, I'm a firm believer in the AI story. I think that technology has the potential to become another internet. Yeah, and this time it will become even faster because we learn and the technology evolves quite rapidly. So a lot of this industry is not something that is going to. I mean, AI, for example, will change all sectors across the world, right? So I come from banking. Of course, the whole banking is being automated, end to end. It's being disrupted by all the fintechs. All the big techs are coming into banking, and they're all AI-led models. Yeah. So, but if you look at so my wife is a doctor. If you look at healthcare, AI is having a huge impact there. A lot of the complex surgeries are now done through robots. Yeah, and it's all AI. So,
but is it really adding productivity to the world? Because my counter argument, if I have to play devil's advocate
Yes.
here, is that it will actually lead to cannibalization, right? I mean, you have like trained doctors who can perform surgeries, but they are not able to do it because AI is doing it. So is that leading to productivity growth in the world?
Yes, because they are more accurate. Yeah, so two things, right? So they can do more surgeries more accurately, right? And then ultimately the model will be bionic, which I mean, human and machine interaction together. So a lot of people are now getting trained on how do you work with these AI machines and models and then make it work together. Yeah, so I think it will have a boost in productivity because the volumes are much higher through an AI or a robot. Second, the accuracy is much higher. So because of course human can still make mistakes, but the machine, as long as the algorithm is well trained, will not make a mistake. So it will boost productivity in that sense. Of course, that could lead to some jobs being eaten away. But again, the time is, then people need to retrain themselves to make sure they can adapt to this new environment, right? So overall, for me, since this is increasing the output in terms of volume, and also it's improving the accuracy, so it is a boost to the productivity. Yeah.
So a couple of last questions. So one is that where do you see the world 10 years from now in terms of business, in terms of innovation, in terms of mega trends that are happening? So how would you summarize this in 4-5 sentences?
Yeah, so for me, I think I'm a big believer in the bullishness of overall technology sector. So I would say, 10 years down the line, you would see this technology trend even more accelerated, and you would see a lot more sectors being disrupted. Yeah. So there is a famous prediction that, for example, there are 20,000 global banks right now. 10 years from now, probably not more than 2,000 will exist in the same shape because the industry will be disrupted. Yeah. And that I predict happening, in a lot of industries in a different scale.
So could we say rise of monopoly? That could be the right summation.
Could be, right? So right of monopolies, and then there could be some huge players who play across sectors, right? So I think we were chatting about Amazon. So I think Amazon is a good example that player could become so big that it has a major influence on not only certain sectors but also how countries run and more over the world as well, right? So you would see few players who become that big. Yeah. So and then the challenge that brings is regulation. Yeah. So if you have such large monopolies across sectors, across geographies, how do you manage and govern that? And last but not the least, I also see 10 years down the line a lot more polarized world. That means that how does this globalization, which was a huge trend of growth over the last many decades, is that reversing a little bit? Yeah. And if that reverses, what it means, right? A lot of supply chains would be localized. And how that plays out, because that will be an anti-growth element that comes to the world as well. And last but not the least, I think on the medicine biotech side also a lot of inventions are going to happen, and we will hopefully see major cures of some large diseases that for example, cancer in the next 5 to 10 years. So it will be a very exciting world over the next 10 years. And as I said, if people can align their skills to these new trends, they would have a very good chance of being successful.
So on that note, final question, that what is it that you see people not doing too much of that they should start doing, which can help them align better with this new world that you're talking about? This is a complicated question, so please rewind it and watch it again.
Yeah. So I think there are two things. So one I would say is skill building on really on the topics that are really relevant for the future that we talked about. Second, I think I go back to a theme that you talk about a lot. It's all about having multiple income streams. I think that's also to me very important to understand. Can I really create at least two sources of income that can help me? Because in a more uncertain world, you obviously want to make sure you have a plan B in case plan A is not working. Yeah. So those are two big things that I would say, one should be focused on.
All right, so I'll start summarizing this very detailed chat. One is that what I got from this conversation is that say 40-50% of your income if possible. That's the goal that you should align with. Create multiple income streams. That really helps. Be diversified. This is something that I keep speaking, and I honestly did not ask Bhavya to plug that in. He himself did it, right? So he himself is a very diversified investor. In terms of where the world is heading, technology is going to shape a lot of things. You have to upskill, like always. AI is going to be a very disruptive trend, the way Bhavya sees it. These are few points. Anything else? Any major point that I missed?
No, I think you hit them all. I think the last thing is it's important to understand. Maybe I didn't mention it, but your strengths and weaknesses as well, right? Because a lot of the times we get very emotional when you make decisions. But I think it's important, be it career, be it investing. You want to make sure who you are, what your style is, what you know, what you don't know, and accordingly adapt to that. So I think that's being honest to yourself is also important.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for doing this informal chat. Believe everyone who watches these type of videos, whenever we invite leaders, it becomes a very formal chat. So let us know your feedback, whether it was informal, useful, any actionable insights that you got, and what you plan to do with this video is the most important part. Even if you can pick up 2 central points, execute it. That is going to change your life, and that is the spirit with which we have actually sat down for this conversation. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.